Hey everybody, it's Filter SC here, and I'm back for episode number 4 of my new Heart of the Swarm Bronze Semester series. This particular episode is one of the most important ones that you're ever going to see in any of my videos, and it's very simple. It's how your mind learns Starcraft 2. Alright, so how I want to look at it is just to use a very simple analogy. If you try to learn an entire biology textbook all at the same time, it's going to feel like a huge struggle if you're trying to read like 300 different pages of stuff and you're trying to learn all the different concepts all at the exact same time. Meaning you don't go back over and relearn something, you just go through it and you try to learn it all at once, all in one shot. That's going to take a lot longer than it would just to learn and master kind of each section of the biology textbook. The same thing applies to StarCraft 2. And a lot of people kind of make the mistake because in a game of StarCraft 2 you do tend to do all the same things all at once. You are scouting, you are trying to do macro, you are trying to micro, you're trying to figure out what your opponent is doing. All that kind of stuff builds into the game. And what ends up happening though is you try to do it all at once, and you have no specific focus. Other areas of your game slip, and you just create all sorts of problems for yourself. You're much better off to kind of try to do one thing at a time, and learn each aspect slowly. And then, you always want to go back and review, and make sure your macro is still up to snuff, your build orders are still up to snuff, as you're working on your micro and scouting later on. One of the best examples I see of this is when a player is really scared of what an opponent can do, but he doesn't truly understand that. Right now a lot of people are really scared of Terran drops, but they don't understand any of the timing of how Terran can drop, what units can come, and kind of where they're going to come from, and how you can defend against it. So what ends up happening is Zerg players and Protoss players, they start building million photon cannons in their base, they start warping in the wrong units to deal with the type of drop that is probably going to be coming, and they end up just putting themselves so far behind because they're overcompensating even more and more, and just saying, well, 2 cannons wasn't good enough, maybe I need 3 or 4, when the reality of it is the Terran's just going to come from a different angle, right? And the flip side is you don't have anything to protect your front, and then you start dying to frontal attacks, right? So it's really important that you focus on one thing at a time, and slowly prepare yourself and understand the topics very in depth before you start making some huge game-breaking decisions in terms of your build order and your playstyle. Okay, so one of the best studies that's been done is taking a professional player and putting him up against an amateur player who is pretty good at the game. This was actually done in Brood War, not StarCraft 2, but the concept remains the same. What they did is they tracked the brain activity and they were checking for which part of the brain was working really hard while playing the game. And what they found was the professional player, the part of his brain that controls his instincts, was what was extremely active during the game of StarCraft, while as the non-professional player, the part of his brain that did thought process and thinking and motor skills and that kind of stuff, that was what was really active for him. Now, what ends up happening is the player that is playing purely instinctual ends up being much faster because he knows exactly what he's going to do and his body is just taking over and doing that. We can apply this to StarCraft 2 when you are playing the game as well. If you get something and you learn it down so well that you just automatically do that response, you're removing any kind of thought process and that kind of stuff, and you're just speeding up the process by a huge amount of time. If you already know that when you see X unit that you're going to do something like Y, your brain doesn't even think, like you just go do it, you're going to be much faster. One of the biggest things you see with like really low level bronze and silver players is quite often something a little bit unexpected will happen, and they'll sit around in their own base and they'll bank 1,000 minerals, 2,000 minerals, because they just don't know what to do. A big drop comes, and rather than instantly going, okay, I need to make new workers, I have extra money because I can't spend it because they took out some of my production, I need to add on some extra production and maybe get another command center to help me rebuild. That's just instinctual. That's just going to happen when I'm playing the game. I'm not saying I'm a professional because obviously I'm not, but that's just instinctual to me. To somebody who's not playing at a similar kind of level to me, they're going to think about it a lot and they're just going to bank up and they're just going to fail and end up losing the game. The same thing applies to killing your opponent. Typically the big difference you see between a Masters and a Diamond player is when a Masters player starts to really get an advantage, he'll be able to push it and win the game, whereas a Diamond player will make mistakes and not take the kills and get the wins where he can. Even if both players, all other things being equal, if the Masters player is just 50% better at winning games that are won, he's going to have a lot more success than the Diamond player, and that'll separate the league. Alright, the next point I really want to emphasize here is you don't want to do too much too fast. If you start trying to, kill your opponent and do all these really fancy plays, but at the end of the day you just don't have the skill to back it up with your own macro play, you're trying to do too much too fast and you're not going to learn anything. You're also going to end up hurting your own play. So if you watch a tournament and you see somebody like Flash capable of dropping 3 different places at once and never losing a unit, you're not going to be capable of doing that, right? So rather than trying to do all 3 different drops, you might want to just focus on having one drop that's successful that doesn't die, right? If you drop 3 places at once and they all die, then the pressure's off your opponent, he's killed off your drops, he feels safe, he can move back out. But if you just drop in one place and you pick that up and move it around, even though you're doing less damage theoretically or you're putting less pressure on your opponent, just by having that one drop still alive, you're going to be in much better shape, and then you can learn to add on a second drop. You can learn to add on a third drop, right? If you're just at a very, very basic level and you're starting to kind of get used to the fundamental macro mechanics of the game, you don't want to even be trying to drop yet, because you're just not ready. It's important to have fun with the game, but at the same time, don't tackle more than you can handle, because your brain simply can't learn anything more than one thing at a time. The next point I really want to emphasize is that it's okay to ignore certain things while you're learning the game. One of the best examples right now is HoTS play. If you're still trying to learn a basic Terran opener with, a Widow Mine drop or something along those lines, it's okay to say, okay, well, if an Oracle comes, I'll probably lose the game. Because you won't have the Engineering Bay up, you won't have the Missile Turret up. Same thing with Dark Templar. It's okay to say, if Dark Templar come, I'll probably just lose the game. And then you're not too worried about it. It takes that stress off you, and you can just go ahead and play your game. And for the games where those things do come at you, it's going to kind of suck because you'll probably lose the game, but you don't want to feel bad about it after, because you're choosing not to worry about those right now, because you want to get your own build order tight, and you want to have your own play looking really sharp. And then after you're comfortable with how your Widow Mine drop opener is coming, then you can start to worry about how you're going to defend against the Oracles, how you're going to defend against the Dark Templar. It's really simple and straightforward. Just, if there's something that's really bothering you, just ignore it. Focus on your build, get your core build really, really solid. That problem might even go away on its own. A good example is, an early Oracle play. If a Protoss is like a hardcore Oracle rush, and you go for a Widow Mine drop, he doesn't have detection in his main base, and you can actually win the game straight up with your Widow Mines, right? If you're faster than he is with his Oracles. So a lot of problems can kind of solve themselves if you play it out and you're a little bit smart about it. But again, it's okay to ignore certain things if they're giving you trouble. If you just want to work on something else in your build, then ignore the things that might give you a little bit of difficulty. It's okay if you die to a 4-gate you didn't scout because you weren't worried about scouting. That type of thing. Now this next point is the single most important point, and what I want you to take home and take out of this particular video. You only ever want to focus on one thing at a time. The reason you only ever want to focus on one thing at a time is because your brain can really only handle one thing at a time. In a game of Starcraft 2, you want to have your instincts handle 3 or 4 things that you've already mastered, and you want to personally be focusing on one thing at a time. As soon as you try to focus on 2 or 3 different things, even a small number like that, you're going to find yourself really struggling to even accomplish one of them, and you're going to find your improvement is very slow. If your only focus is on picking up your drops and making sure they don't die instantly, that's all you really care about at the end of a game, and you want to just double check to make sure all the other skills that are kind of instinctual, like your macro and stuff like that, is up to par. You're going to start picking up those drops, and very, very soon it's just going to be habitual. You're going to know when to pick up a drop. You're going to know what situations you should be picking up your drop quickly in. And over the course of 10, 15 games, your drop play is going to improve a tremendous amount. But if you're trying to learn like 8 different things at once, that same drop play improvement might take you 100 games. It might take you 200 games to get it anywhere near what it would be if you just focus on it. So remember, when you're trying to play the game and you're trying to learn something, focus on that and count that as your victory or loss within the games themselves. If you're a Zerg player and all you do is want to get better at creep spread, and all you do is focus on creep spread, and you lose the game because of a drop in your main when your creep spread was so good, don't worry about it. You can always worry about dealing with drops at a later date. Count it as a victory, move on to the next game. Again, I really want to emphasize this even more. When you're trying to learn something, Just learn one thing at a time, always have a goal, always have a focus when you're playing, so that you can continuously get better. If you're just trying to generically have 8 different things to do, like take a faster third, get more drops, get faster upgrades, get this, get that, you don't have any timings or metrics, you don't even know if you're improving or not, and it's just going to create a giant mess. But if all you're trying to do is pick up those drop ships before everything dies, you're going to know right there and then in the game if you're succeeding or not. And this leads me into my next point, which is never try to compensate for your own problems with build orders. One of my friends just recently said this to me. He said, well, I'm not very good at scouting, I always miss drop ships, I think I might get fast overlord speed so that I can see the map better. And I asked him, why would you do that? Why don't you just learn how to scout better? And he didn't really have an answer, because that's the truth. You should just focus on his scouting. As soon as you start adding stuff into your build because you're having problems with certain things, like, you know, if you start getting 2 or 3 bunkers against Protoss just because you're scared of getting all in, you're much better off to try to figure out the solution to the problem that is correct, or have better scouting, or figure things out, and sometimes just understand that you just are going to lose a couple games here or there to an all-in. That's why they're so popular, right? But the worst thing you can do is have 3 bunkers up in your main, like 4 missile turrets in the back. You know, you just delay everything so much with all that extra money you're spending on static defense and things that just don't need to be there. So it's really important that you never try to compensate for problems that you're having with your build order. You don't need 4 photon cannons to stop a drop. You just need an observer to spot it, and a warp-in cycle available to get some zealots to clean it up. Very simple. Alright guys, that wraps up this particular episode of Bronze to Masters. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and hopefully you're looking forward to diving into some of the race videos. I'm Filter Starcraft, and I will see you guys next time.